Welcome to a very special episode of the VRCade Podcast, where we'll be discussing Atlantis, our upcoming game. Today with me, we have Roland, the CEO at VRilliant, and Simon, the lead product designer. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Very fine.
Yeah, quite well. Thanks, Serge.
Excellent.
Good to be back.
Yes. It's been a while. The release of Atlantis is rapidly approaching, and we're really excited to share some details around the game with everyone watching, and also our first gameplay reveal as well, which we'll get to in a little bit. So we will also be answering your questions towards the end. And I'm going to kick it off by just asking, where did the idea for Atlantis come from?
I think I'll start off, and then Simon, you can add to it. So it was. I think it's two aspects. On the one hand, we wanted to make sure that we create a lineup of games where we're able to cover sort of the broader customer needs that you'd see in a VR arcade. That means you have, right, with Brought Apple, we covered kind of the horror shooter fans. With Plush Rush, we covered a family-friendly title. With Atlantis, we wanted to do something for escape room fans and VR escape room fans. And I think that's where the idea kind of started to, like, that's the direction that we want to go in. And out of that, we just thought that Atlantis was a really, really cool concept that people might also be familiar with, and we want to see what we can do with it.
Okay, and Simon?
When we think about new titles, we also always consider what's something that you can't see or do in real life. That's also why Atlantis was very attractive to us, was that you can't ever go there or see it in real life. So it's something that is really cool for VR to dive in for an hour and experience that. So we think players are going to be really excited about that.
Okay. And what kind of games have influenced Atlantis? Roland.
I think there's a couple. I think one of the things that most stuck out to me was there was a Disney movie a long time ago, which I watched as a kid, which I really liked, which was Atlantis.
Yeah.
And that definitely served as kind of a basis of, okay, an underwater world and an ancient lost civilization. That's really cool. Then there's definitely some elements of Portal.
Interesting. Okay.
So I think just of like this guiding entity throughout the game, not quite, not the same, but probably inspired by it to a certain degree. I don't know, Simon, what would you add?
So there's a wonderful co-op game called It Takes Two, and that is we're going to talk more about it, I'm sure, but it's also an asymmetric co-op game, so you need two players and you need to work together to play through it. And that was one of the early inspirations for Atlantis, was that we want to have you can't play it alone. You need at minimum, you need two players, because you need to work together to be able to advance and play through it.
Okay, and with Atlantis, you need a minimum of two players, right?
Exactly.
Okay. What is it? Come.
Yeah, we figured in an arcade environment, you definitely have at least two players. Usually the problem is more that on the upper end, you're not able to support enough players. It's rarely that you don't have two. Or at least even in our arcade operations, I think it was very rarely that we saw just one person coming to play on their own. I think in the sort of 4 years that we've been operational, it happened once so far.
Okay.
And even for single players, there's enough games out on the market, we believe. But together, this multiplayer aspect that you really need to work together, it adds so much depth and it's richer interactions. So yeah, I think it's worth the trade-off.
Okay. So what was it you had to consider the most when creating a game specifically for VR arcades versus the home market?
I mean, I think Simon can go on a giant tangent on this one, just to what we've learned. So I think, Simon, no one's better suited than you are to answer this one.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into making an arcade game, a core thing is that players need to be able to play through the whole game in like half an hour to an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that if there's 10 minutes of tutorialization, that's like can be already like a third of the playtime, right?
Yeah.
So you want to really keep that to a minimum. You want to make it as fast as possible to get players into the game
Mm-hmm.
and having fun. And with a game like Atlantis that has like a lot of different mechanics and puzzles, that was like something we thought about a lot. So what we did was that the tutorial itself, like where you actually have like screens telling you what to do, is like really, really short. It's like 2 steps. And then throughout the rest of the game, you just see more and more different mechanics. And that's a part of the puzzling. So you kind of like, it's not a tutorial, it's just the game getting more and more complex and you learning more and more different mechanics about this world. So that was like something that we really had to adapt to arcades.
Yeah. So it's kind of as you progress, new mechanics become available, and then the player learns as they get further into the game.
So I'd actually be careful there. I think the point, the most important point is that it would. Also, I'm just seeing that apparently we're too quiet. I don't know if there's something
Okay.
that we might be able to do about it.
Yep. Okay, yeah, I'll get on that.
Sure. No, but it's less new mechanics. I think the really cool thing about Atlantis is that it's built around a single core mechanic that the players learn at the very beginning of the game. And it's a very intuitive and simple one. So one's shooting a bow, one's sort of a power glove that they need to shoot with.
Mm-hmm.
And especially for arcade customers, right, the goal that I think you need to have as an arcade is to minimize the time from someone arriving to them being in the game having fun. And that was exactly the goal with Atlantis. That essentially you have the players come in, they learn that mechanic, and then it's just that one mechanic that they need to use continuously in different ways. So instead of constantly having to learn, oh, how does this work in VR, or how does this work in VR?
Yeah.
At the very beginning, they learn the core mechanic and they're set for the rest of the game. And this way, right, for operators, especially for arcade operators, it's hopefully really easy to just kind of get the people in, get them in the headset, and off they go. And 60 minutes later, they're going to come out and they'll have had a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And that was the idea.
Okay. So what was the most challenging part of the development process?
Well, maybe I can do the start and then I'll give it over to Roland. So one thing that's actually really, really hard is making good puzzles, which we kind of knew before we started, but it was still harder than we expected. So it's maybe easy to make a puzzle, but it's really hard to make a good puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And a good puzzle has like several components, like you should know what you're trying to achieve, but not how to achieve it. But if you're just there and you don't even know what you're supposed to do, what you even want to do, achieve in the end, then that's not fun. And yeah, so you want to start like simple, introduce one element at a time, and always keep it like so that players are like have instant feedback and always like a bit of a dopamine kick and learn something new, get one step ahead. But yeah, creating good puzzles, it's also very hard because you can't test them yourself.
Yeah.
Once the development team has played it once, they're like kind of useless to test that puzzle anymore. Like you need new people every time that you want to test it.
And I also remember that sent us spiraling a bit after the first few play testings because I think people either didn't get the puzzles or the puzzles were too difficult or too easy. And I remember, especially at the beginning, the first couple play testings, we had quite a bit of the game that we already wanted. Sort of lined up, even though it was in a completely gray box environment, which we use for development purposes to quickly be able to adjust how a specific level looks. And people just pulled through this entire thing in 15 minutes. And we started panicking to, shoot, we want, a 35 to 45 minute experience at the very least. We're clearly way too low on content. And where this then ended up, and that's where we are now, is that it looks like we've overdone it a bit, which means for a fast team, you'll still have 50 to 60 minutes of content with Atlantis. And we actually had to go back and build in systems that make sure that if a player is too fast or too slow, we actually teleport them to the end of the game, so that no matter how a player comes in and no matter how quick they are, they're always going to have a full experience with Atlantis, and at the end they'll have solved it. To just kind of give them that feeling of victory at the end of it. And this is at various points just meaning that you have this kind of guiding entity that goes like, okay, this has been enough. I'm going to move you to the next level. And yeah, just to sort of have that positive ending.
Yeah, as opposed to kind of game over, and then people will be like, I never got to finish the game.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, but, and then I guess adding to Simon's point, I mean, I think we just broadly underestimated how difficult Atlantis would be as a project. I think following Rotten Apple, following Plush Rush, we thought, okay, this is going to be quite easy, and well, not even quite easy, but like that it at least definitely not as hard. And one of the most difficult things was actually to get everyone on the same page to what Atlantis means. And this was 2 months into development that essentially we were talking to the team, and everyone was talking about Atlantis, right? Atlantis, yeah, of course, Atlantis. And when we started putting together pictures of what Atlantis means for each of us, it came out so differently to who had what in the back of their minds. So I think one of the bigger challenges was also making sure that we have, sound, art, game design, development, narrative design all sort of lined up and on the same page to what the final product should look like.
Yeah, like you said, everyone's got a different idea of Atlantis. I'm sure. I think there was everyone's ideas was totally different. So it was good that we all kind of everyone put our heads together and had a real good discussion about it.
It was also funny because after Plush Rush, we didn't have that problem at all actually in Plush Rush, because I don't know, everybody knows what a children's bedroom looks like, what a child's bedroom looks like, because there's like a ball on the floor and these funny carpets and like a double bed, and it was like very clear how a bedroom looks like from a child. And with Atlantis, that was very different because it's an imaginary place, right? So yeah, that was definitely one of the learnings from this project.
Yeah,
but it also made for a couple of really fun brainstorming sessions in Budapest with the whole team, where everyone came together to kind of figure out, okay, what is it that we want to do. So that was also really cool.
Yeah. So why is Atlantis perfect for VR arcades? What makes it a really good game for VR arcades?
I mean,
who should start? But Simon, go ahead.
Thanks. So we have built in a whole bunch of features for arcades. One of them would be that you can set any time between. We would recommend something between half an hour and an hour, and what we already talked about, that the game will end in a smooth way, so everybody gets to experience the full story. And that was something that we learned from operating our own arcade. For the game masters, a lot of times it's not fun to, like, the next group is going to come in 10 minutes and you kind of need to pull your group out of the game. And they haven't finished it. And then it's just like they paid to come play. And then in the middle of the game, you kind of need to pull them out and be like, yeah, time's up, go home now. Which is, I don't think it's the perfect experience for the game masters and also not for the players. And that was one of the inspirations we had for Atlantis, to make it always kind of like end smoothly and positively for the players.
Yeah, okay. And how does Atlantis differ from other projects by VRilliant, so Plush Rush and Rotten Apple?
So I think what makes Atlantis a bit unique is that, so Rotten Apple starts off with a story, goes over into what's wave shooter mode in different levels.
Yeah.
Plush Rush was based on learnings from Rotten Apple, also built as a wave shooter, but just much more intuitively tutorialized, and also for a different target audience than Rotten Apple originally was. And with Atlantis, you have a bit of you have a really cool spin, I think, on traditional escape rooms, which is it's something that I think we weren't quite ready to do yet when we built Rotten Apple, but we also had in the back of our minds. But just sort of as we matured in what we do, with Atlantis, we were able to nail mixing escape rooms and action, which means you need to collaborate on the one hand in sort of, or the players will need to collaborate on the one hand in puzzle situations, on the other hand also in kind of these more adrenaline-rich fight situations. And one of the metrics, or well, metric, I guess is a very vague term for this, but essentially one of the things we're able to measure that by is if in the arcade we have people play Rotten Apple, they're going to be screaming. And that's mainly going to be because they're scared. And that's really cool. Because, right, a lot of emotion, a really immersive experience. Awesome. What we then also notice, though, is that if we have players playing other games that aren't necessarily as scary, the level of communication drastically drops for most groups. And they're not as excitedly talking to each other about what to do. And as we got closer and closer and closer to sort of what Atlantis is, the amazing thing was that through sort of the collaborative mechanic that you need at least 2 players, and the players always need to work together to achieve the different steps, you had players that were not as loudly because they weren't as scared, but still just really actively communicating, talking, screaming at each other on what to do, what not to do. And that was a really cool development to see happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only thing I would add to this is that, yeah, this collaborative, cooperative element at its core certainly is like something that we didn't really do in the first 2 games. Of course, they're always multiplayer. We always play together, but here we really built it deep into the game. So like you have a voice chat that has like proximity chat, so you hear players that are close to you always. And we even have like some effects. So when you're like in a bigger room, it like sounds differently, your voices.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But do you remember where that idea actually came from? Like this hyper collaborative idea. I remember exactly when it was born. I wonder if you do.
I don't think I know the exact moment, no.
It was that at some point we noticed when we were testing Plush Rush with the development team that even after we've tested it for the 100th time, what we started with every single time was interacting with other players and shooting at each other and kind of messing around with what we could do with each other versus the sort of environment around it. And that's where the idea was born to, hey, what if we made like a really collaborative game at its core? And I think that was where the whole thing kind of was born.
Yeah, it's true. I just remember that it was like basically coming from the team. So it was like really, it came up many times from the team, like, yeah, we would like to have more collaboration, more interactions between the players. Yeah.
it was Flora shooting Andrin and in the games. That was good.
And
Yeah.
maybe to come back to the question of what makes Atlantis good for arcades, I think another element that Atlantis brings with it is that it's this mix of puzzling and combat that is really good for like mixed groups, because sometimes you have like families, you have like bigger groups on a team event or whatnot, and some might want to fight a bit more, some might want to puzzle. And Atlantis also has some elements for exploration, so you can go look for treasures. And all this combined in one game means that it's basically a big sandbox a bit for different types of players. So I think everyone will have fun. Some will prefer fighting, some will prefer to puzzle or just look around. And yeah, so you can really offer it to those mixed groups.
Yeah. And I think actually one of the things that's really unique to us, or something that I at least believe that might give us a competitive edge, is simply the way that we test our games, which means essentially the way Atlantis gets play tested, right? Because Simon already mentioned the fact that like, we're not really able to test the game because as soon as you know the riddles, you're just useless as a tester to us. It's great. So we had to have a constant stream of new testers coming in to be able to see whether or not we're on the right track with what we want this game to be. And The way we test is actually we have games that book our VR arcade, and at the end of their session, if we have time, we just go like, by the way, do you want to try something completely new that no one's ever seen before? And I think almost always people are quite excited to do that. And essentially, what this in turn means is that throughout every single iteration of Atlantis that we've done to get Atlantis to where it is now, it's just been torn apart by players who are the target audience for the game. And that's something that, to the extent that we've done it now with Atlantis, I don't think we've ever done before for another game. And this is it's probably one of the learnings that we're going to keep doing. We didn't do it as much with other games because we weren't forced to. With the riddle setup of Atlantis, we were really forced to do it. But that's probably something that we should keep for future games as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 100% right. It even shifted so much that a couple of years ago we kind of implemented a feature and we tested it internally, and I'm confident it's good. And now we did this small change to one of the features, and I'm like uneasy. I'm like, we haven't really play tested it yet. I'm not sure if it's good. Like, I want to have this tested. So the shift was like a complete turnaround, and yeah, that's definitely like super valuable.
I mean, it also got to the point that even when I was testing, you guys just neither you or Chun actually listened to the feedback that I was trying to give, which is I'm getting a little dizzy going up these stairs, and it's like yeah, sure, Roland, as if your feedback is still valuable for anything at all. And then I think the same day or half a day later, we had a group testing it, and one of the people in the group went, this in the same space, I'm getting a little dizzy, right? And you see Simon and Chun taking notes, like, oh yeah, we really have to change that. And I was on the other side of the guys, come on. Yeah. Fun times.
How was it to kind of find the happy medium then between, because I'm sure some players said it's too easy, some players said it's too hard. How did you go about finding the happy medium?
Right. So, I mean, when you create a product, ideally you always define your target audience first. So there's not the perfect game for everyone, right?
Yeah.
You can only do a good game for a certain group where on average this group will find it cool. For us, it was like very clear that we wanted to make a game that's accessible to the average arcade customer, that normally they haven't really played VR before. They maybe don't even play many computer games in general. And we also have kids in the arcade. And so we wanted to make a game that kind of like people in these groups can play through them and have fun.
Yeah.
And that's where we started out. And then obviously you can never make a game that's perfect for everyone. But I think the cool thing is that now that we have enough content for a good hour, but we always have a good ending, it means kind of the game adjusts itself to the skill of the player. Meaning that if you're a bit slower, you might not see all the puzzles, but you still experience a full game, right? And if you're super fast, then you might see all of the puzzles and the ending. So that's kind of how we did it.
And I think in part it also goes back to the experience that we have. So where we originally started out was we were building physical escape room locations. And one of the learnings from there was it's oftentimes what makes for a better escape room is a larger number of smaller puzzles that continues and continues and continues. Rather than these single, very hard, very complex puzzles, especially if you want to sort of target your average customer who is after a long day wants to have a bit of fun. I think those are much better suited.
Okay. So what aspect of the game are you most eager to showcase to players?
One thing that comes to my mind would be the underwater effects.
Mm-hmm.
So there's these really cool moments where you actually dive into the water and you can like really with your headset like kind of drop under the water line and you dive in. And that's like the first time we actually played with that in our development. We kind of like almost felt like we had to hold our breath while we were underwater. which was like pretty good indication that might be also interesting to players. And now when you're underwater, you actually also hear like you're in a diving suit, so you're gonna hear like this mechanical breathing once in a while, and the bubbles coming up, so that you kind of know that you're still breathing. And yeah, so I'm excited for players to see this whole underwater effects.
On my end, I think a lot goes into the narrative design. So this was the first game where we actually worked with the narrative designer, Benza, who just did an incredible job of really bringing sort of the characters to life that or the character to life that kind of guides the players. And I don't think we've ever had a game with, actually, so I know we never had a game with quite as many voice lines, where just one, or I think writing them, two, then organizing them, three, having them all recorded and then localized, was just quite a large portion of effort. And I'm really curious to see whether this is something that players are going to actively look forward to and really adds to the immersive experience, even though it's obviously a side character. But yeah, I'm just really curious to see how that's going to work out once it's really out there in the world.
Yes, I've sporadically been into the game and seen how it's developed, and it's just looking really, really good every time. Once every few weeks or so, I jump in, and I was in yesterday, and I was like, "There's so many improvements." Really excited for everyone to see the game and when it releases. Could you tell us more about the release plans at all?
I mean, we're working at Simon knows this better than I do, but we're basically working at light speed to get everything in that we can. Essentially, the target is to have a first release build next week, which then means that this is a first release build that we send out to platforms and then there's still a stretch of time between then and the platforms actually going live with Atlantis. Which always varies a bit, but I guess more generally you can say it's the next couple of weeks, and then this is obviously going to be followed by sort of a hypercare period where it's sort of all the whole development team kind of on alert to anything that we might have missed for whatever reason. You're going to see sort of patched as soon as we possibly can, and I think that's just a really important part because we do test very extensively, and I think it's more extensively this time than we really ever have, but we still want to be ready that if anything comes up or anyone runs into critical issues, that we can patch that as quickly as we can.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry, Simon.
No. I mean, one more thing I could add possibly is that we want to release the game early so we get more feedback, like Roland said. We want to you can only test so much at some point. There's so many arcades with different hardware and software and different ways to run the game. But then the other thing is also that there's a lot of things that the art team still wants to polish and iterate on. So you really want to get to a point where you can release a game, because you can spend forever on a game, right? So you want to get to a point where you can release it, where it's good, where people will enjoy it. And then we also have some plans to add more effects to the game, to polish further the visuals, and then kind of spend a little bit more time on it to really those little details that are not super crucial, but all in all they will add another layer of polish on top. So that's also the plan for the next couple of weeks.
Okay, and we also have a 7-day free trial. So if anyone is interested, there's a form linked in the description. Where you can just fill it out quickly. It won't take long. And when we have a build that is suitable, we can send over a 7-day free trial. That's not a problem. Quite a few people interested in that. And we'll also be, prior to release, we'll have a trailer, of course. So that's something else that we are looking forward to showing everybody as well. If you subscribe, you will be able to get notified when the trailer is actually becomes live. So that'll be great. And also, you can contact us on Discord, which is linked down below as well. Anything else you'd like to add, gentlemen?
Mm,
I'm really
no-
excited to get your feedback on Atlantis, and like we were cooking on it for a long time,
Yeah.
and then it's always excited to let it out into the world and see what comes back. And the voice, like the actual customers playing it, the voices that come back, that they say what they liked, maybe also what they didn't like. That's super exciting, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing is the game releasing, and then all the feedback as well, right?
Yeah, like the feedback that comes. And like just seeing people play it and hearing from them, that's always the best, because we don't really, we in our own arcade, we see people playing our game, and that's already pretty cool. But there's so many more different arcades out there that
Yeah.
will play the game, and to hear from them, that's always great.
Yeah, for me, two thoughts came to mind. One, when you mentioned the yeah, the different headsets and the different streaming systems, there's just so many. I mean, I do not envy Chun. I have seen Chun's matrix of sort of right the different headsets that he gets to test with the different right each combined with the different streaming systems that are available to just make sure that we're compatible as broadly as possible. And actually, I think when it comes to development difficulties, sure, I mean that might not necessarily count in development, but on the QA side, I think that's a huge chunk.
Yeah.
And so absolutely hats off to Chun for taking care of all of that. And then the second one that just I had to laugh is on the trailer. I think we had so much going on with Atlantis that we are a bit later with the trailer than I think we originally probably should be for a gaming company. But on the other hand, all the conversations that we've had around sort of music build up and what the trailer is going to be, I'm really excited about that one as well. I think that's going to be really cool.
I mean, we're just going to call it a release trailer, right?
So we have plans for more trailers than we actually ultimately have every single time. I think we kind of want to do an announcement trailer, a teaser trailer, a release trailer, and then so on. I don't think we've ever actually managed to do all of them. I think we always manage an announcement trailer and then a release trailer. But that's fine.
Yes, I mean, from who I spoke to a lot of arcades, and everyone's really excited, even people in the chat, to see the trailer and actually play Atlantis. I mean, the beta testing was really cool. We got so much good feedback as well, great feedback, and that really helped us develop the game too. Yes, so thank you everyone for watching and supporting VRilliant. We really do appreciate your support, especially with playtesting our games and just the general feedback. We have a really good community in our Discord as well. We really appreciate each and every single one of you. Thank you to Roland and Simon for coming onto the show and discussing Atlantis with everyone.
Thank you for hosting us, Serge.
Exactly.
Okay, everyone. Don't forget, you can like the video and subscribe, and you get notified when the trailer drops. Join our Discord if you want more information and if you have any questions at all. And thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.